The master of mystic arts returns to save reality itself. What's the probability he succeeds? Find out when Johnnie Torch reviews Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Well, we are back with you once again on another Johnnie Torch review, and this one's going to be a doozy. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Well, let's start off by talking about the original Doctor Strange film. I really enjoyed that one. I thought that was a great film, and I watched it again recently to prepare myself for Multiverse of Madness. Uh, I pretty much, just to give you a quick review, I think I've done a video on this before. You can find that elsewhere on my channel. But I really think Benedict Cumberbatch is a great choice for Doctor Strange. I think he really should be the face of the MCU going forward. Uh, we still have Fantastic Four and X-Men waiting in the wings, but pretty much all of Marvel's greater heroes are either dead or retiring. I think we pretty much only got Thor and Spider-Man left. And this version of Spider-Man is not particularly enjoyable to me. So I'm pretty happy with Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. I'm a big fan of origin films to begin with in the superhero genre, and I think Doctor Strange ranks among one of the best. The weakest point for me was the Ancient One. They race and gender changed the character. I wasn't particularly convinced of Tilda Swinton's performance as that character. She felt like an anime character to me, someone that didn't quite carry off the gravitas of such a character. She seemed far too young and, I don't know, not quite wizened enough, for lack of a better term. But Mads Mikkelsen is Caecilius, sort of a third-tier villain, but, I think Mads really added a lot of oomph to that character, really made him somewhat memorable. One of the standouts was Baron Mordo. I don't believe they called him Baron in that film, but I remember him as Baron Mordo. And I found his storyline very intriguing because basically he became a villain because he couldn't even with the good guys bending the good guy rules. And I was really hoping that they would sort of return to that and follow up that storyline where he was sort of going to be the executioner of sorcerers, which is of course paradoxical since he is a sorcerer himself. And another thing that I liked was the almost romance with Christine Palmer, Night Nurse. And I was really hoping that they're going to carry on that storyline. I know Rachel McAdams is going to be in Multiverse of Madness, and so I was hoping that they would carry on with that. Well, one of those happens and the other one doesn't. We'll get into that in just a second. This is a spoiler review, so usually I try to give my basic thoughts before we get into spoilers. So I will say that I did enjoy this movie quite a bit. I think it was very good. I said on Twitter my first reaction is I want to stop short of calling it a masterpiece, but really it's close to it. I think it's on the better side of masterpiece. Now, where does it stack up against Phase 4? Quite honestly, it's probably at the top. Now, I know it's kind of a low bar with all the films in this phase being sort of subpar, but I would say Spider-Man No Way Home had higher highs, but consequently also lower lows. So if you're going to judge it by the standard of it being a constant good, if not a constant great, I would say Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness is a better film. It's consistent all the way through. it's not, it doesn't quite go for the gold, though I don't really think it needed to. But then again, it really doesn't fall on its face the way I think the early scenes of Spider-Man No Way Home I found quite agonizing, to be honest. So I would tentatively put in the Multiverse of Madness at the top, with maybe a hair's breadth uh, under it being Spider-Man No Way Home. I guess Shang-Chi after that, then Black Widow, and then Eternals. Again, not particularly the strongest crop, but I think we're trending in a good direction here with the Multiverse of Madness, and I do have some hope for Thor: Love and Thunder, which is coming up next. So, yes, I enjoyed it, and we're going to get straight into it now. We're going to get into the spoilers. Like I said, I got a lot to talk about with this film, so I imagine I'm going to be here for quite a while. So, buckle up, strap yourself in, and let me know in the comments below what you thought of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. First off, my first reaction from this film was, this is Sam Raimi's greatest hits. If you are a fan of Sam Raimi, you're going to love seeing. I mean, Sam, I would say that he's probably, if you go by averages, my favorite director. I'm not really a fan of horror, and this film does have its share of horror. But I love the three Spider-Man films, all three of them. I love Spider-Man 3 too. Darkman and Army of Darkness. I really didn't get in too much with the Evil Dead franchise. I've seen some of them, in bits and pieces, but I'm not really a horror guy, so I haven't really sought those movies out. But that's a pretty strong body of work. That's like 6 films. And if you like 6 films by a director and can appreciate his style, I've got to say he's one of my favorite directors. Now, you can feel a lot of his influence in this film. I think that there's been some criticism that it feels too much like a Raimi film and not enough like an MCU film. I don't think so. I think the two go together very well, because Sam has that kind of kitschy comedy styling that the MCU can do some of it, but I think Sam does it better than the MCU typically does it. And I think that's why it was a match made in heaven here, because you still get a couple of groaners that feel like it was standard MCU comedy, but most of the comedy stems more from the Sam Raimi school of comedy. And we'll start with Doctor Strange himself, Benedict Cumberbatch. A lot of people are saying that the Scarlet Witch stole the show with this movie, and I think to an extent maybe she does, but she is, of course, the villain of the piece. So I don't think she gets more screen time than Doctor Strange. I think she does dominate a good part of the story because she is the villain. She's the antagonist. She's the one that's moving the plot forward. It's kind of like trying to say, well, is, the Joker really the focus of The Dark Knight or something like that? Not really. I don't think he has more screen time than Batman, but he is such a force that it takes up a lot of the time, clockwise. But I don't think she dominates the storyline. So, for a quick synopsis, Doctor Strange is forced to protect America Chavez, who is this character that just came in for the first time in this film. And her powers are being desired by the Scarlet Witch, who wants to use those powers to open up a portal to find an alternate reality where her children are still alive. And of course, if you've seen WandaVision, you know this. If not, you're kind of in the dark. And she needs to open this portal to go to another dimension and supplant the other universe's Wanda and be the mother to these kids. That's pretty much the storyline. Like I said in the opening, I think what I liked a lot was that they went back to Christine Palmer. They didn't just write her off like a lot of MCU movies have, like Betty Ross completely disappears after The Incredible Hulk. Jane Foster gets kind of, nudged out the door. Now they're ready to use her again, only because she's going to be a Thor in the upcoming Love and Thunder. But in this case, they didn't completely shy away from the fact that there was a lingering storyline there that needed to be addressed. And in the 5 years, of course, all these Marvel movies post Endgame have to, in some way, explain away the 5 years. And in this case, I guess Christine didn't get blipped. And so she carried on with her life and ended up getting married at the beginning of this movie. Doctor Strange losing the girl before the movie even started, but he kind of already fell out of favor with her in the first film, and he was so busy being the master of mystic arts that he never really had a chance to reunite with her. And it could have been possible, but of course, then you have Infinity War, Endgame happening, a lot of stuff happening to prevent that. So it starts off pretty sad that, it's sort of his lot in life to be the man with duty above all else. And of course, you probably hear me say this throughout the review, but that's a very Sam Raimi trait from Spider-Man. The original Spider-Man, which is still my favorite of the Raimi Spider-Man movies, was tantamount to the phrase, with great power comes great responsibility. And Doctor Strange, pretty much, also a Lee Ditko creation, lives out that storyline in this film. Eventually, he crosses paths with Christine from another universe in the multiverse, and he still doesn't get the girl. And quite Easter eggish that she's a redhead, much like Mary Jane in this other universe. And he even gets the same like face caress that MJ used to give Peter. It felt very much in keeping with that, and I love that. That's one of the things I think that Sam Raimi brings to this film that a lot of directors don't. It's the old school duty over what your desires are. It's having to protect the people you love because you're a superhero. We've lost that. Basically, I think probably since Iron Man, we've had that sort of in the MCU. Well, you've got certain things like maybe Captain America in the original first Avenger maybe put duty above everything else, but it seems like these MCU heroes don't have that problem of I can't be happy because I'm a slave to my duty. And Doctor Strange has that in this film. And I love it for that. And I think Sam Raimi is a lot to thank for that. Also, the original transformation. That's something else that's kind of lost on the MCU characters, which is very old school. I think you had Iron Man perhaps having the best kind of superhero transformation. You could say maybe the Hulk and the Incredible Hulk. But the superhero transformation has pretty much been gone since the MCU's early days, probably even the first phase. And it's brought back here where this giant squid alien creature is running amok. And Strange basically just dives out the window and transforms into his superhero costume. And that is so great. I haven't seen a great, really exciting, breathtaking, here comes the superhero transforming and getting ready to do his duty in quite a number of films. And again, this is something that I think Sam Raimi brings to the table beyond his usual horror stylings, which we'll see a lot of in this film as well. But you feel like you've got an old school master at the helm, and you could tell he really remembers his craft well and uses much of the same tricks. So you see a lot of Darkman as well in this. I think that probably was more evocative at the end where Zombie Strange comes back with sort of his zombified appearance. That kind of felt like a tribute to Darkman. But so the Scarlet Witch, let's talk about her now. The Scarlet Witch, I'm kind of conflicted about this because, in a sense, I feel badly, and I kind of felt this was coming, that they were going to make her the Dark Phoenix of the Phase 4. I don't know that she's going to come back after this, and that's kind of the sad thing. I would have liked to see some kind of redemption for her, but the thing is they pushed her so far down the path of darkness that they really couldn't redeem her other than to make the noble sacrifice. Of course, she does the Samson thing and tears down the temple, the pagan temple, and destroys herself with it as sort of part of her penance. And it's sad for me because really this was a, I don't want to go too far in saying a pure character, but she was very heroic, very noble up until WandaVision. And it's interesting because it's a double-edged sword the way I described it on Twitter. On the one hand, I applaud them for sort of just doing the movie and saying, all right, we're not going to hold your hand about this. If you didn't see WandaVision, if you've never seen any Avengers movies and you have no idea who Wanda is and how she relates to Doctor Strange, we're not going to help you. We're not going to hold your hand and try to explain this to you. But at the same time, they kind of backed away from her true suffering because she's single-mindedly focused on her kids in this film. And she suffered so much. Her parents were killed when she was a teenager. She and her brother were taken and sort of, I don't want to say experimented on, but sort of were used as pawns of Hydra. And then, of course, Pietro, her brother, was killed by Ultron, which like sort of seeds the darkness in her. I think at that point, she's in love with Vision. Vision is killed by Thanos, and of course, WandaVision shows how she ends up falling, deeper down that hole and spiraling into using the darkness to create the two kids. And it kind of feels like they needed to remind you of what it took to bring her there. I think a good writer, I use this example and on Twitter as well, in Revenge of the Sith, when Anakin turns to the dark side, they did, even though it seemed kind of hokey, they did make sure they reminded you when Palpatine says to Anakin, remember what you told me about the Sand People and your mother. They needed to sort of remind the audience that, look, this is not just a woman that's bereft of her children and is, disconsolate. This is also a woman that suffered many other mistreatments and ills over the course of a short period of time. And this is sort of built up on her. And you can even say in Civil War, she was basically that pitiful scene of her being like strapped to some kind of chair or something because she's under General Ross's prison there. It really is a lot, and it seems like we don't really get too much into her psyche to really analyze that. That maybe would have been something that could have been expounded upon a little bit more. But still, I think for the longtime fan, for the fan that really has, gone through these films, it seemed like the natural progression. And like it says, it's hard. Like I said, it's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking because she was one of the good guys, and she was one of the, if not original Avengers, she was a core Avenger that, we've lost one of ours. And in a way, I don't know that they eulogize her properly for that. It's another one of those things where she just gets so evil that, she ends up going to Kamatage to capture America Chavez. And I love the names of these places. What was it? Tai Lo was, I think, Shang-Chi, and Kunlun, I think, was Iron Fist. I'm trying to remember all these names. But Tamakaj, I think, is that's the Doctor Strange one, right? Well, she goes there, and again, this is sort of in line with Army of Darkness. Doctor Strange has all his, well, actually, I guess it's Wong's students that are all preparing with bows and arrows and cannons and trying to protect the base. And she basically, decimates them all and destroys a lot of people. And of course, there's what I call Shooter's Law. Shooter's Law, of course, named after Jim Shooter, who said that Jean Grey couldn't just come back from being the Dark Phoenix. She needed to be punished. She destroyed planets full of people. And you don't just to go back and become an X-Men after that. You have to be punished somehow. And so it's the same way here, where she really did damage in WandaVision, but really by the taking of many lives in this film, had to be punished. And that's what the sad thing is. Of course, there's possible ways for her to return. There's always another way with all the different multiverses that we'll see another Wanda. I think I've already heard that Elizabeth Olsen wants to come back in some form, because we really didn't see the Magneto tie. That's something that we kind of were looking forward to, because in the comics, at least originally, Magneto was the father of Wanda and Pietro. Then, of course, I think there's this long, convoluted storyline where they changed it because Fox had the rights to the X-Men, so they couldn't say that. And then I think they changed it back, but they may have changed it again. I'm not too sure about that. But it would be nice if they could continue on with her character. I don't know if it will be the original Wanda, but again, I think the only thing I didn't like was I didn't like the new costume. I liked the other costume from WandaVision. I thought it looked a lot better. Of course, this is tantamount to what we get in the MCU now. They have to be covered from head to toe, and you saw some of her bare arms in the WandaVision costume, so that can't be. We have to completely cover her up. That should segue into our next thing, the wokeness. I know a lot of people that's the first thing, that the MCU and how woke is it, and I think there is definite traits of it being woke, but I think that they are faint. I don't think that it's anything that's going to take away from your enjoyment of the film. The most glaring, of course, is America Chavez, who I believe in the comics is lesbian, but they make no mention of that at all. But they do have a quick flashback to her two mothers. And I went in fairly neutral on America Chavez. The only thing I knew about the character is that she was pretty much despised by a good segment of comic readers. I don't really know anything about her. I don't know anything about her powers. So I went in with a blank slate. And the character was fine. She was serviceable. I kind of liken it to Kate Bishop, a similar character in Hawkeye, the Disney Plus series, where you have a lot of fans reacting badly to her and they don't like Kate Bishop. And I don't know anything about her because I stopped reading the comics when I could tell they were starting to get I was probably ahead of the curve by about 5 years. In the mid 2000s, I kind of gave up reading. But I don't know the character's comic background, but both characters, Kate Bishop and America Chavez, are serviceable at the very least. They didn't make me love her, nor did they make me hate her. She's kind of just there doing what she's supposed to do. In this film, America Chavez is sort of the MacGuffin. She's the one that they need, Scarlet Witch needs for the powers that she has to open dimensional portals. Again, just serviceable. I was fine with her. I really don't need to ever see her again, but if I do, and they just keep her as sort of this generic sort of fledgling hero, I guess it'll be all right. But that's kind of the extent of the wokeness. I mean, there's like certain things where I suppose, Christine is marrying a black man, which of course this is, I see the joke all the time on Twitter where it's like, interracial couples have like multiplied in the last 5 years in media. I mean, it's kind of like the trendy thing to do, I suppose. If you consider that woke, then I guess that's woke. And they still have Wong being the Sorcerer Supreme, which I don't like that, though I do like Wong. And I think Benedict Wong is a great actor in this part. And I enjoy him. And they sort of do this running gag where Wong is like, "Oh, you have to bow to the Sorcerer Supreme. It's tradition. It's tradition." I don't remember anybody bowing to Strange when he was Sorcerer Supreme. So you kind of think maybe he's just joking, but then it's like, well, it bears out that like people are bowing to him and Strange eventually bows to him, which would be fine if that was something that carried along through the whole of the MCU, but it seems like something that they just invented for this film as a running gag. I was hoping at some point that he would become the Sorcerer Supreme again, but apparently he's not going to. I suppose it's understandable because he'd been missing for whatever it was 5 years during the blip that Wong gets the title, but you would think that Strange would get the title back now that he's back. I guess they're not going to do that. I knew they weren't going to kill off Wong because he's a good character. He has a lot of potential. I mean, I think they're talking about maybe doing a spin-off Disney Plus series with him. We've seen him in Shang-Chi and that he was doing some kind of training with the Abomination, which they don't reference here, but seems interesting. They don't reference much of the MCU outside of this. They I think probably did a reshoot where they threw in some name drop of Spider-Man so that you can follow the storyline that this takes place after No Way Home. I think America Chavez says something like on most in most universes they don't use money, and again that's sort of like an anti-capitalistic thing. So I mean there are some things to nitpick if you want, but I don't think they really just detract from the overall enjoyment of the story. Your mileage may vary. To me, it wasn't that big of a deal, but I think a lot of people go into these movies to look for something to complain about, and I think the MCU gives them ample things to complain about. So it's like one's not wrong and the other's not right. I mean, if you're going into the films to look for something to complain about, you're going to complain about all of them. But the complaints are usually warranted. There are some things like that you just say, why did you even need to do that? You know what I mean? All right, so the other character, so let's get into the Illuminati. The other character I was most interested in seeing come back was Baron Mordo. And he does come back. Chiwetel Ejiofor returns as Mordo, Carl Mordo. They even make a joke about that. I always thought that was weird. Carl Mordo. He sounds like this big, dangerous guy. What villain is named Carl? You know what I mean? I mean, Carl Wilson is like the only guy I know ever named Carl, But he's in charge of the Illuminati. He's, I guess, the Sorcerer Supreme of the universe that Strange and Chavez find their way in. And we never get... See, I think they did right by Christine, because they wrote her out in such a way that made sense. I can't argue with her, like I said, getting married to someone else. When it came to Baron Mordo, though, and of course that we do have an alternate Christine through the rest of the movie, but when we come to Baron Mordo, his alternate, it seems like there's a movie missing, because Strange kind of talks like, well, I have an adversary in my world and he's a jerk and he's named Baron Mordo or whatever, and you're probably a jerk just like him. And it's like, well, the last time we saw Baron Mordo, he just like walked away from the temple or whatever. He walked away from the practice. He didn't want to be a sorcerer anymore, and he just left. We don't know that he's a bad guy as far as Doctor Strange is concerned. Nobody knows that. So they kind of left it open like, well, is there a movie in between, or is there going to be a Disney Plus show that's going to explain what happened to him? Because we've never seen him fight Strange. We've never seen him be defeated by Strange. Maybe they're just sort of like dangling that out there and they're going to talk about it in Doctor Strange 3. But as far as I know, it doesn't make any sense, because that was an intriguing storyline. What was Mordo going to do? And they just gloss over it. But of course, they still have a Mordo in this. The cameos, the Illuminati, everybody was going nuts. They're going to have Hugh Jackman. They're going to have Tom Cruise as Iron Man, which I completely don't get. I've said this before. I don't need to see Tom Cruise as Iron Man. I don't know why people salivate over the prospect of a Tom Cruise Iron Man. We got the best Iron Man with Robert Downey Jr. Just seeing Tom Cruise wave in the Iron Man suit wasn't going to do anything for me. It wasn't going to set my heart aflutter. Hugh Jackman, I mean, he probably had no place in this film. I even heard somebody, as we were leaving the theater, say, oh, I wanted to see Toby Spider-Man. That was probably something I'd been more interested to see. But again, there really was no place for these extemporaneous cameos. I think it made sense to taper down on them and only use characters that made sense in the context, not to just have, people walk by the camera and wave and, or sort of, look up, look left, and then exit stage right. You know what I mean? It wasn't needed, really. So I didn't really have a problem with the limited number of cameos. The cameos we get: John Krasinski, is that how you pronounce his name, as Reed Richards. This is something that fans have been clamoring about for a long time. They've wanted to see him and Emily Blunt, his real life wife, as Reed and Sue. I don't know Krasinski too well. I've seen a couple episodes of The Office. I know that he's sort of like a Chris Pratt, where he was like started as a TV comedy or something, and I suppose now he's known for being more of a straight actor. But he was fine. I didn't have a problem with him. Some people are either hate it, or some people are like, they gave us what we wanted. Me, I think it was fine. I didn't have a problem with it. We get Black Bolt in the actual costume this time. Now, remember, there was that lousy Inhumans show with Anson Mount, and they did bring Anson Mount back. I couldn't tell under the mask at first, and I was like, did they actually do that? Did they go so far as to get Anson Mount to play Black Bolt? And they did. So I give them props for that. Now, the thing is, and of course, Professor X, Charles Xavier. Now, the thing is will they bring any of these three back for a future project? That's what I'm interested in. Now, they don't necessarily have to hold to Reed Richards being John Krasinski, but at the same time, they went so far as to bring back Patrick Stewart and Anson Mount. Kind of leads me to believe that they're going to bring back Krasinski as Reed Richards. Let's see. Let's first talk about Patrick Stewart, of course, with the Professor X and the X-Men theme, and he's in the yellow hover chair. Just great, awesome stuff. That's the kind of fan service that you want to see. And Patrick Stewart, he's getting up there, but honestly, he still has the gravitas. He still lends something to the performance, to playing Charles Xavier. It's really tough to, sort of discount what he brings to the role. After all these years, he's played this character now for, what is it, like 12 years, something like that? Man, it was still good to see him. And again, they used him in the way that I expected, as sort of the only one to sort of bring out the Dark Phoenix from Wanda. Now, of course, he isn't successful, and he ends up getting killed. A lot of people saying that Professor X has a very bad track record so far with trying to depossess, beautiful young redheads. But for some reason, he just can't seem to succeed with that, and he doesn't here either. But again, I enjoyed seeing him come back. Anson Mount as Black Bolt. Really liked this character. I remember as a kid being a big Fantastic Four fan and wanting to see Black Bolt in action, and seeing him with that power that, the slightest whisper is enough to destroy mountains, and that's his power. That's his curse. And we got to see just a little of it, but it was fun. It was great. And of course they killed him, but we probably still have a Black Bolt in our reality, just waiting to be explored, hopefully. And, that was kind of a nasty way he was killed. That was the only thing that I thought might have been a little too much for the kids, because there was some speculation on it. But that was the only one that was a little. Reed Richards getting turned into blue spaghetti was also, it wasn't that bad, though. It wasn't that graphic, but that was kind of an interesting way to destroy Reed Richards. Now, some people have complained also. Now, I hear all the complaints about these movies, and to be honest with you, this movie, I can't really go along with a lot of the complaints that I hear about this movie, because common sense really dictates what needs to be done. Now, they said, well, they killed off the two most powerful ones, Black Bolt and Reed Richards, the easiest. Well, that's really very easy to explain, because you don't want to blow your whole, CGI budget and excitement on seeing a Reed Richards in an alternate reality fight to the death. He had to get killed early. so that you could be wowed when they actually do the Fantastic Four movie, and you get to see Reed Richards doing everything that we know he can do, and that he survives and defeats the villain, saves the day. That's kind of what was needed. Same thing with Black Bolt. You see Black Bolt save the day here. There's really no need for a long, drawn out battle, because you know the Scarlet Witch is going to win, because they are only cameos in a alternate dimension. So they focused on the two characters that were, obviously, different versions, alternate versions of the core characters. Like the Reed Richards in this universe kind of looks like and acts like the Reed Richards of that universe. Ditto Black Bolt and Professor X. This Captain Marvel, Leanna, I can't remember her name, but she was the one in the most recent James Bond film, No Time to Die. She was trying to take over Bond's role, and everybody got nervous that she was going to supplant him or something. She was the I don't know if she was Monica Rambeau. I think she was the mother of Monica Rambeau, and she was Captain Marvel in this version. She gets in a few licks, but she gets destroyed. And of course, Peggy Carter as Captain Britain, I believe. I think they called her Captain Carter though, and she gets dispatched. Again, not too easily, but pretty serviceably. And I was fine with it. I was fine with the Illuminati. I thought everything worked out pretty well in that scene. I think if I had another complaint, it might be that the film slowed down a little too much at this point. It got a little stodgy, but they were quite literally world building, so I kind of understand it. I can accept it, but I think on the rewatch, it's going to be a little more difficult to probably hope that the wheels turn a little faster. Maybe, I don't know. All right, so I'm trying to think, what haven't we talked about yet? Well, let's see. The evil Strange in the in like the leading up to the last act, he has to defeat an evil Strange in another universe. So that was pretty good too. Let's talk about the horror aspects, because I talked about the evil Strange in the trailer review, where the evil Strange kind of reminded me of Dr. Edelman from House of Dracula. That's going back to the 40s, for those of you who don't know. And again, it does have that sort of old school sensibilities here. I mean, we got Wanda possessing another Wanda, and she's sort of blood splattered and chasing them through a dark tunnel and so forth. These are the kind of things that like Raimi also is so good at, with sort of the jump scares and the close-ups and the shaky cam, and these are all things that added to sort of the ambience of the film, and it really was good. And of course, Danny Elfman, they've been partners in crime for a long time. I know they separated for a while. There was some animosity between them. I think Danny didn't even score Spider-Man 3. It goes back that far, but glad to see them reunite, because it worked out so well. I mean, you could tell the musical cues were just old school, terrific. And it felt like, Danny Elfman's one of the best. I think besides John Williams, obviously, he's the best when it comes to writing a score for a film, I think, still, hands down. He's done so much in the superhero genre, especially. But speaking of musical cues, so the fight with the musical notes between the Doctor Stranges, I thought was very inventive. See, that's the thing about Doctor Strange, is you have to do something inventive with his powers. And I thought that was a cute way. I thought that was a clever way to use his powers as a weapon without doing the same old, well, here's a electricity blast, and here's a, energy weapon that I just pulled out of thin air. It was interesting to see them do something creative with that, and that was a lot of fun. Again, getting into the last act, the horror elements. I'm not a big horror fan, and I was a little put off by, Strange conjuring demons to try to help him. As a Christian, that kind of stuff doesn't really sit well with me. I talked about this too on Twitter. I think some people go like overboard. Some Christians go overboard, because I even seen a video where I was watching some of the reviews last night after coming home from seeing the movie, and some Christian reviewer was like acting like, "Oh, this is, opening a portal to the devil," basically watching this movie. And I think some people go overboard in some of that, but I think you have to be very careful. You have to be very conscientious about the using of demons and Satan and fiction. You have to do it for the right reasons. And this was kind of neutral. I don't know. I mean, maybe if I see it again, I'll have a different idea about it. But what this felt like to me was sort of Ghost Rider 2, Spirit of Vengeance. Now, I like the original Ghost Rider a lot, and I think they did well by the character there. But then when they did the second one, and it was kind of like, well, Ghost Rider is, not the purest of characters. He's kind of got, this working of darkness in him and this and that. And I got the same feeling here where it's like they tried to emphasize that Strange will do the dirty work if he needs to. He'll get his hands dirty, in other words. And so if he has to conjure up demons in order to do something, he's going to do it. He's not going to just, let the world end because he couldn't do something about it. And basically, even if it means selling his soul in the process, that kind of feels like Ghost Rider to me. That's these dark heroes that I don't particularly cotton to all that well. But I think they carried it off as well as possible. And it seemed that he was using the demons to his end and not like, not working with them, not cooperating with them. He was basically using them to his own ends. So I was kind of all right with it in the final analysis. But again, it depends how you're going to feel about that. If you're a Christian, maybe you feel a different way about it. I think it was okay, but again, it kind of made me feel a way, to use some some common everyday slang parlance. I was a little put off, but I think it worked out all right. All right, so let's see. Is there anything else? Well, the Bruce Campbell cameo. We got to talk about Bruce Campbell. That was funny. That was funny as all get out. Of course, he always cameos in a Sam Raimi film. And I think the cameo they gave him was pretty funny. At the end of the movie, particularly, some people probably didn't take it very well, waiting all that time for the post-credit scene to be him. But I thought he was very funny and very effective in sort of the way that he usually is in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films as a cameo. I think also, let's see, the mid-credit scene, I guess, sort of sets up the sequel. Now, I'm glad there is going to be a sequel, but it could, of course, be something that happens in another film. We don't know. But Clea, which is a popular character in the Doctor Strange books. Again, I don't know a lot about Doctor Strange from the comics. I didn't read him that much. I know of him mostly from Avengers books and maybe the guest starring appearances in Hulk and Spider-Man or something. But so this is the sort of the setup for the next film, I guess. Now, because he got his hands onto the Darkhold, he has the same problem now that the bad guy Doctor Strange has, or had, which is the third eye. And apparently this is going to be a source of problem for him at the end of the movie, because we see him basically falling to his knees in pain, and then he has the third eye. Then we jump forward after the mid-credits, and Charlize Theron shows up, of all people, in another snazzy, completely head-to-toe one-piece outfit that is apparently Clea. I didn't see her name in the credits. I don't think they ever mentioned her name, but apparently that's Clea. And she's going to lead Strange to another adventure because his monkeying around the multiverse is not over yet. So that's an exciting place to take us for the next adventure. I like I said, I really like this character. I think he's fun. I think he's, I kind of felt like they're trying to make him sort of the mentor of the MCU now. That's sort of a role that I didn't think was befitting of Tony Stark. And I think it's not much more befitting of Doctor Strange because between America and Peter, he's like always like, all right, kid, I'll take you under my wing. I've never really seen Doctor Strange in that light. But again, I'm not too familiar with his exploits, but he didn't really seem like the mentor type. And so in a way it's fun to get to see him play against type, but it's like two movies now. And I think maybe they should return to sort of you know, the default version of the character. Uh let's see, is there anything I haven't touched upon yet? Well, we get America Chavez. I guess she's going to become a sorcerer in training. I'm not sure. Again, I don't know where that character goes from here. I'm not particularly interested in her. Wong is still the Sorcerer Supreme. And Strange, I honestly thought they might give him a shot with the alternate Christine. But again, that's what I love about this, where they made it that, duty is higher than personal gratification. And he has a duty to his universe. Apparently, she's not willing to leave her universe. I mean, I don't know that it's necessary that she goes back to her universe for paradoxical reasons or, the universe folding in on itself or something. But if that is the case, it just goes to show. But yeah, I thought that was a nice moment. And it shows that, old school, responsibility is still something that the superhero movies can learn something from. I thought that was very good. And of course, the multiverse is still something out there. Wanda, again, a very touching scene. I don't think we can praise Elizabeth Olsen highly enough with what she did with this character. I think she did a great job because she says, like, very early in the movie, and I think everybody's seen the trailer where she says, you've bend the rules and you're a hero. I bend the rules and I'm a villain. It doesn't seem fair. And it just seems that way. It seems like she's a tragic character. It's like life wasn't fair to her, but it's not always fair to everybody. And it's turned her into something dark that, like I said, I wish she could have climbed out of metaphorically, like she was trying to with Professor X. But you know, she goes at the end, and the image is sort of memed at this point, as early as it is that the film has been out, not even a week, but it's kind of memed that, like, the alternate version, good Wanda, sort of touching the face of the Scarlet Witch, the evil Wanda, and her sort of comforting her pain now that she sees that, her two kids in this other reality that she so desperately wanted to supplant, the Wanda from that reality, they can't stand her. They take one look at her and they're terrified of her and they don't want to have anything to do with her. And that's powerful. That's kind of the only thing that brings her out of it, is seeing that if she finally could get her kids, she's become something else that her kids would not like, that she cannot be the mother to those kids. Her kids will never really be restored to her, and that's a sad thing. And I guess that kind of will carry on into whatever future they have. I don't know exactly if they're going to recruit this alternate Scarlet Witch, this alternate Wanda. We'll see how that goes. I'm not sure. All right, so to give it a rating, let's see. I'm going to give Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness a minus. An A minus. That's let's say a 4.5. I'll give it 4.5 stars. I'll give it an A minus. Like I said, there's a few things I think they could have tightened the screws on. I think it's still a great picture. I think it's an A picture. I wouldn't say it's like I said, a masterpiece. There are things that it could have been tightened up and done better, but for the most part, I think if you look at this as part of a whole, you know, as part of the Wanda journey and the destination of the Wanda journey, I think it hits all the notes it's supposed to. If they could have, they could have tightened it up a little bit better. Again, with Vision, they don't even mention him, and I don't even remember the end of WandaVision, to be honest with you. It's been about a year, and I honestly, but I think they placed his consciousness in another body, right? He's going around out there as the White Vision. We never got any closure on that. And again, I can't really mitigate that against this movie because maybe they're setting something else up for something in the future where the Vision comes back and somehow Wanda comes back. I don't know what they're planning on. But again, it does feel like it's kind of incomplete. And that's why I think if they tightened up the screws and sort of gave us some idea if this was the real finality of Wanda would be one thing. But in this case, I'm not sure. And of course, maybe there was some pacing issues, maybe one or two woke moments that I would have excised if I had the opportunity. But on the whole, I was very satisfied with Doctor Strange 2 and the Multiverse of Madness. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Did you like the film? What did you like about it? If you hated it, what did you hate about it? Where do you think Doctor Strange goes from here? Where does the Scarlet Witch / Vision go from here in the storyline? I don't think there's going to be a WandaVision season 2. That's pretty much been confirmed. So whatever they do here is probably going to take on some different form in a different film or series. So let me know what you think in the comments below. And until next we meet, this is Johnnie Torch reminding you once again, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon.